Hey everybody, Joe Klemczewski and Adam Atkinson back at you with Contest Prep University. And we're going to talk about something that I'm a little kind of 50-50 on, Adam. You're going to have to talk me through this one, but it is how to make sure contest prep fits your life, how to put everything together, how to make sure you're still enjoying all those parts of normal life, perhaps even innocuously, not even feeling like you're going through a prep. But that word that everybody likes to use, balance. Certainly not opposed to the concept of keeping everything in order. But Adam, when I hear that phrase, it initially makes me feel like, well, you're trying to stack a whole lot of things into your life. And so nothing's really going to be done well. It's just balanced. Um, and there's a part of me, at least, that feels like to succeed well, especially at a sport that is so demanding, you're just not really going to achieve as much balance. So give me your initial takes on this and we'll see where we can go.
Yeah, I think we always have to look at what balance actually is, and I think it gets taken a lot of different ways due to Instagram with what people, there's definitely a difference with bodybuilding balance and maybe just managing the weight that you've lost balance. Uh, so when we're talking on Contest Prep University, you're still going to have to be really rigid on your plan. And maybe the title's what looped people in to watch this, but you really should be tracking your macros, hitting your cardio, lifting, intensely and doing those things. But what I find a lot of people struggle with is with the time commitment that prep does take. Are you spending time with your family? Are you spending time with your friends? One of the things that made me bring up this topic, I trained a really young female here in Las Vegas, and the social life settings out here are pretty um, involved. There's pool parties and things of that nature. And she told me how she had went off her diet because she was crying on the floor because she had lost her social life, and her friends picked her up and said, "Come out with us." And I had an honest conversation with her. I said, if you are completely shutting out your friends and not doing the things that you used to do, this is kind of a red flag. And I said, my challenge to you is still go to the pool parties, just don't drink. So literally midweek, she chose to do that. And she had emailed me the next day and said, here's my check-in. By the way, thank you for the conversation. I went out with my friends. I came home earlier than I normally do, but I had a great time and I stuck to my goals and packed my meals. So, things like that are things that oftentimes people don't realize they may have to overcome or should overcome. And the way I sold it to her was, if you're not dancing and moving, you're not burning as many calories. So go out and have fun. Just don't consume the calories while you do it.
Yeah, perfect place to start because, like anything, you have to have the definitions, you have to have the right perspective. And you're exactly right. In a sport, whether it's physique sport or a performance sport, there is an element of this is what I do as a profession, or at least I'm treating it that way. I want it to be that. And so there are some concessions. My neurosurgeon, he doesn't drink, he doesn't use caffeine, he protects his hands, he does certain things because this is his profession. He's willing to make those concessions, not to say, well, damn, I want to be more balanced. I want to be able to get in fist fights and break my knuckles and so forth. Um, so that therein lies, I think, where we have to be careful what we expect as competitors, because your form of balance may still have some boundaries that you have to be okay with, and as you're describing, Adam, your friends, your family have to be okay with, because I never want people to consider it to be reality that your life just doesn't have to change at all. I have even started addressing general population clients as they are entering a stage of very serious work, and they want those results. That part of this has to be like fight camp. Part of this has to be blinders are on, you're getting rid of other things in your life, so that you're not distracted. We know dopamine is a currency that you only get so much of every day, and so even your willpower, your strength and resolve can become depleted day to day and throughout the day. So I think that's a really great way that you created some boundaries for her. Please still do this, enjoy this, but here's where you probably need to be careful. I'll give it back to you in just a very real sense that Austin, our dietetics director, is in the middle of a prep right now. And I just see it in his affect. I see it in how often he reaches out. I see it in his communication. I see it in the things that his whole interest level and demeanor in certain things has dropped because we do just run out of energy in that calorie deficit, mentally as well as physically. So as long as you understand those things and you're okay with it, and the people around you are okay with it, and you're doing your best to kind of seek that middle ground, obviously that's where we have to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's why it's that much more important to really hang on to the things you were doing, because there is going to be some, resolve and divide where you aren't doing the things that you used to do. Um, when I hear you talk about that, I think of that from a partner perspective. My clients who are married, it's really hard for your spouse to understand how you feel. And there's really only one way of fixing it, which is eat more or rest more, which usually still pulls time apart from you guys. And I think in the terms of blinders on, as our as we age, we usually have the ability to take on more things, or think we have the ability to take on more things, because maybe we've been married for a long time and that seems very stable at the time, right? But then you add a prep in there, your mood changes, everything changes, your partner's confused. A lot of the things that you thought were taken care of, maybe it's your work performance goes down. These things start getting dicey as you get into prep if you don't learn how to manage them well ahead of time.
Yeah, and the management part is critical, but I don't know if this was just justification on my part or not, but I remember feeling like because a prep, a particular contest season was very important to me. When I would feel that lethargy and I was naturally doing less, and perhaps even just my involvement in family life, I would have this feeling, well, wait a second, this is probably what it's like for most, quote, normal people. I'm a manic person. I'm always in fifth gear. So for me to backtrack a little bit and be okay in third gear, I thought I kind of deserve this. Like I can take this time. And I still believe that's true. But as you said, if spouses, family members, children, et cetera, if they're not in sync with that and they don't know what's going on, you haven't had those conversations, it could be pretty tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I competed, my work performance definitely went down. I was in my, you know, I would say a really big rise in my career as a coach in bodybuilding. And that was one of the reasons I turned off competing anymore, because these people I were getting had so much better genetics than I did. So, for me to put them on stage versus myself, like, it just seemed very selfish for me to do it personally. Not to say that coaches can't coach and compete. I get an inquiry a year about that. My coach is in prep, so I'm leaving. So, it's just how it is. I think it's always a little bit of a red flag with those clients, because they could just have an honest conversation with the coach and say, "Hey, I'm a little bit worried about you competing and how I'm going to do." As time goes, they're probably not going to communicate something to me, down the road.
Yeah, and that awareness has to be a two-way street. I've said this before, but it was really kind of a gut punch to me when in my very last contest prep ever, a coworker said, "When are you going to be done with this fucking diet? you haven't smiled in 6 months. And I thought that may be a pretty fair assessment. And so it made me a little bit more cautious about my affect and how I'm presenting myself to other people, because again, that's just physiological change. You are going to feel a certain way, and even though I didn't feel unhappy, that's just the status of your neurochemistry and your endocrine system. So yeah, I think there are some things to this, Adam, though, that are very positive. I don't want to scare people and say, "Wow, competing really sucks, and you're going to have a horrible time." Um, Again, that focus, like there was part of that I liked. I was so laser focused on what I was trying to accomplish in every particular season that when my world would shrink intentionally and maybe even unintentionally, there were some favorable aspects to that. That's what allowed me to climb the ladder, become a pro, become a decent pro, improve every time. And I think there are some even lessons in that, in how we redefine that concept of balance. Maybe it is more balanced for you to take some time like this for yourself, get rid of some of those peripheral things, especially if you really hold to some of the healthier aspects of what we're doing. Certainly there are health benefits to being lean, doing more cardio, eating cleaner, and so forth. So I'm wondering if you find a client who's really struggling, keeping it all together, all four tires on the road during prep. What are some of the key things you advise them with just real life mentorship?
Yeah. Honestly, take a step back. It can be good for you to take care of those things because they may need a little bit less management once your prep restarts again. So I'm really open with clients on, kind of telling them like, hey, you just told me something that's a major red flag or could be life changing for you if we keep going down this path. Sometimes it's just straight up relationship stress, and that can be really difficult for people. So, just knowing, I think this goes in all cases, health cases, mental health cases, relationship cases. As a coach, I think sometimes newer coaches struggle with this. It's more important for the client to move the show back and not put them on stage just for the advertising benefit of it. You really have to do what's good for that client. And time again, that patience leads to a better result. A client that appreciates you more for, being human and saying, you know what, let's take a step back. Let's take care of some things. And then we can move forward and go gun ho on the show again. I literally just had a client have to stop because she's like, my son is just a priority right now. And like, I can't argue with that at all. Like, that's the perfect reason to quit.
Yeah, no, honestly, that was my reason when my oldest child was 12 and we have four, so 12 down to six. That final prep, that's when I knew, this is not the time. My kids are at the ages where they just need me more, and they need an undistracted me. And so, speaking of balance, it can also be chronological balance in terms of when this fits better into your life. But let's go through some very, very, very tangible things that people can use to employ. And I'm going to start pretty basic, and I hope it doesn't sound too cliche because it is so critical. I'm working with two physicians, one a neurosurgeon who has spent the last 20 years of his life working on, both of them have pain management backgrounds. And this big project they've been working on, especially Dr. Hanscom for the last 20 years, is in uh, what I would call functional neuroplasticity. How can you know, and how can you take the steps to completely physiologically restructure your brain by creating different kinds of synaptic connections between structures of your brain that you're intentionally atrophying versus hypertrophying? And again, it comes down to perspective, because what fires together wires together. That's how our brain chemistry works. And one of the just primary tenets is a healthy brain is going to be better in any context. So in this situation, you have this prep. It's going to be physically demanding. There are going to be some grueling aspects of this. So sleep hygiene, if you are running yourself into the ground, so your nervous system, your immune system, everything is functioning super, super low. You already have a taxed mental affect. Now that's going to be even lower because of lack of sleep. If you cannot factor in the primary amount of sleep, as I've heard Dr. Hanscom say in our coaching calls, just forget about it. Like everything else we're working toward is not going to work if you are not getting the right amount of sleep. So I think a lot of people who we're speaking to, they do a lot of things well. They're going to meal prep. They're going to get their cardio in. They're going to train. They're going to listen to all kinds of information and get the best tactics and tips and science. And yet they're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But besides that, what are some of the more basic yet foundational things that we need to have in place?
Yeah, sleep's definitely huge. I think good communication is the other. You really have to let your coach know like what you're going through, because it's really easy when you're in a prep to have people assume how you feel. I've had people who, got to single digit body fat and claimed they felt great the entire time. And I wondered, how in the heck did they make that happen? So don't always assume people know how you feel, and be communicative. So then, having a coach, hopefully we can fix some of those issues or make the prep a little bit more enjoyable, or just one thing that I do with my clients. One of my clients said that her family was just in a rough spot. One of the daughters was going through something, and she was a little bit worried during her prep that she wouldn't be as available. So she didn't want to say no, but she also said, if this gets worse, we're going to call it. And I said, that's fine. I had her rate what her family health scale was for the week, so we could kind of, just touch on that, on a number 10 being the best and, 1 being the worst, kind of let me know every week in numerical fashion how home life is going.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, even in the sense of just positive outlook and self-efficacy. So similarly to what you're describing and how you're communicating and relating to other people, that internal dialogue is huge. If you're somebody who is self-loathing, beating yourself up all the time, looking at the negative aspects of what we already have as humans in terms of negativity bias, it's going to be very, very difficult because again, your brain responds to that. We have these thoughts. Those thoughts change our brain and body chemistry, and then the brain has to react to that. So the brain can be very self-sabotaging, and that negative self-talk, those doubts. Think of the person similarly to what you just described, who's on the other end of the continuum. Everything's always level 10 happy, always a smile. Nothing could ever knock them, down. They just feel great. They're always, walking on clouds. And I think some of us could be skeptical, like, what are they hiding? Like, what, is that just a facade and inside they're crumbling? But there are a lot of people who just realize this. I have a choice. This is the way I choose to view the world. I want to be positive. I know what that does for me. In one of those neuroplasticity coaching calls I was just describing, we were going over a section this week on processing anger, and a couple people who said they had really had some struggles with anger, they finally got to the point where they could just look at their own reactions in certain circumstances and say, this just feels awful to my body. Forget about the situation. When I'm not happy, I feel awful. And they know what that's doing to both their mood and their physiology. So they said, I just started every time I would have a certain reaction, catch myself, again, self-awareness, and just practice turning that into a different thought. And that is the beginning of true neuroplasticity. And that's how we can even change our own psychology, our own personal, way we relate to not only other people, but ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So give me some more things that you would think are tangible that people can do to create this balance. Things
Yeah,
with schedule, things they're leaving out. Just what are other ways that you could say, man, I'm going to check that off the list. That's a great idea.
I think honestly making a list and just being really self-aware, and where that list might be important is coming back to it every week and making sure that you are checking off those boxes, because prep really is a lot to juggle. And the more, pizzas in the fire, the more than likely one is possibly going to get burned or not taken care of. So, you just really have to make sure you're organized, and that's a really great way of staying organized and on top of everything.
Mm. So a lot of people talk about finding the right tribe, being around like-minded people. And of course, competitors who are going through this or they have gone through it, they understand it and they can help and they can support you. But I also find it important, speaking of integrating into the real world, to have other people that are not necessarily the opposite, but other people to kind of balance that, to make sure we're not creating this bubble that is not very reality based. So, have you ever seen clients who get too isolated into their own little subculture?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that that's where, if you don't have a support system, it can be very, very difficult. Those people that are a little bit more shy or maybe even single too, I think that can be really difficult and make the prep certainly harder and managing everything. And then you also don't have anyone to call you out. I only see what I see from an online perspective. It's really unrealistic for a client to think you're going to live with them and follow their every move, even though some clients seem to expect that. But, you really can lose yourself in this process if you are just by yourself.
Yeah, coming full circle back to our original point, I wish I could think of a better word than balance, but it makes me think of this sliding scale, just like social media has divided everybody into camps, right? Politically, whatever. And so you can isolate yourself, but how much better are we when we have to learn to live with other people in those different contexts? And so I think there is a time and a place for you to, as a competitor, as a physique or performance sport athlete, have your group of people who know you, who support you, where you can recharge and energize your efforts with. Uh, and then, when you're not in those contexts, like your client who's going out and having a social life with friends, doing other things, it's not that you are becoming somebody else, but you still have to fortify your principles, your goals. Here's how I'm living, but yet I can come over here. I think that becomes very inspirational for other people because we should be known for our attachment to our principles, to our health values, to the goals that we say we want to achieve, because win or lose, we all want to know that we did our best. And if all of those steps along the way, we're just not quite as fantastic, they add up. So for us to be able to go into those other contexts and still be who we are with complete resolute execution in our behavior, that's not only important, but I think that helps us practice that. When you can say, I have these values, I'm going to work, I am not going to at all give 1 inch up, toward my goals. I'm going to be 100% flawless in those circumstances. When you can get out there and do that, it's just like training a muscle, right? Like you get better at it. And then, like I said, I think you can still enjoy those other parts of life, and that does create some quote balance.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, this you kind of did what I hoped you would do, which is bring me along into finding a little bit more of a middle ground instead of bouncing back and forth, because I stand by the fact that part of this has to be 100% fight camp based. You are locking yourself away from certain distractions. You have the focus that you need. Nothing is going to break you, but you still have to do that in the real world. So you can't completely blend those things together. There is bouncing back and forth between those extremes, but however you create that continuity, that's the path you have to walk all the way to the stage. So thanks again, Adam. Really appreciate your insight on this, and we will see you guys next time in Contest Prep University.